Hey there, guys. Welcome back to my channel. Today, I want to talk about the movie Devotion. First of all, let me just say that this movie is a masterpiece. The cinematography is absolutely stunning, and the acting is top-notch. The story itself is also incredibly moving. It's a story about love, sacrifice, and devotion, hence the title of the movie. One thing that really stood out to me about this movie was how well it captured the time period in which it takes place. Overall, I would highly recommend this movie to anyone who loves a good drama with strong performances and beautiful visuals. So, without delay, let's go to the summary of the movie. Lieutenant Tom Hudner, played by Glenn Powell, is a naval aviator who has recently transferred to Rhode Island. As he enters the locker room, he hears a commotion coming from the restrooms. Ensign Jesse Brown, portrayed by Jonathan Majors, walks out and asks if he's the new transfer. Hudner then meets the other members of Fighter Squadron 32, Carol Mooring, Bo Lavery, Marty Good, and Bill Koenig. The squadron is led by Lieutenant Commander Dick Sevely, played by Thomas Sadowski, who shows them intelligence indicating that Stalin and the Soviets have tested their own bomb and it won't be long until they strap it to a bomber. Sevely assigns Hudner to work with Brown on a mission. Brown is a fearless pilot who takes risks without thinking twice. He always manages to stay in control, even if he doesn't follow the rules. One day, on their way back home, they decide to take a detour. Hudner follows Brown closely, as he knows that a good wingman never leaves his partner behind. However, flying with Brown is not what Hudner is used to. Brown even performs a nosedive in a residential area, and if you look closely, you can see Daisy Brown waving at them from her front yard as they pull up at the last minute. Later on, in the locker room, Hudner asks Brown about his reckless behavior. Brown simply replies that the only way to truly know your wingman is at 2 feet above ground level. When Hudner suggests grabbing a beer together to get to know each other better, Brown declines politely since he doesn't drink. The squadron then goes over to Sevely's house for some clams. Hudner shares with Lavery that he joined the Navy right after hearing about Pearl Harbor and graduated just 1 month after the war ended. Lavery comments on how life doesn't always turn out as planned and asks Hudner if he ever thought he would be in a squadron with a colored aviator. Hudner avoids answering the question and moves on to enjoy some food instead. Brown arrives home and greets a neighbor who seems unhappy to see him. He enters his house quietly and startles his wife, Daisy, who is painting the hallway walls. Despite this, they have a loving relationship and a 3-year-old daughter named Pam. Sevely gives a briefing to the team about a recon plane that washed ashore with bullet holes underneath. The team needs to prepare for the Russians in a new type of plane known as the Widowmaker. The engine is one of the most powerful things these pilots will fly behind, and if they throttle too much, it could spin them over or even flip a house due to its torque. The pilots must be cautious while flying it. On his way home, Hudner sees Brown on the side of the road with car trouble and offers him a ride home. During their conversation, Hudner shares that he joined the Navy because he was called to adventure and didn't want to take over his father's grocery stores like Brown did. Brown always wanted to fly with the best pilots, so he also joined the Navy. When they reach Brown's residence, Daisy offers Hudner a drink which he politely declines as he assumes that Brown has plans for him already. Daisy reminds Brown to be nice to Hudner even though he doesn't know him yet. The pilots personally inspect the dangerous planes, running drills and familiarizing themselves with the new aircraft. They receive word that they will be deployed soon. Daisy encourages Brown before he departs from home. The following day, Brown hides in a bathroom stall, waiting for everyone else to leave the locker room. He stares at himself in the mirror and berates himself with degrading comments. Meanwhile, Hudner successfully lands his plane while everyone watches. It's now Brown's turn, and all of the black crew members gather to watch him. Unfortunately, Brown flies too high and misses the carrier on his first attempt. Hudner advises him to get his nose up, and with the help of a flagman, Brown is able to land the plane on his second try. All of the pilots pass their carrier qualifications, including Hudner, who scores perfectly. As they prepare to ship out the next day, Sevely reminds them to settle their affairs before leaving. Hudner gives Brown a ride home and is invited inside by Brown this time around. Daisy offers Hudner a drink and asks him to support Brown during their deployment. Brown spends a pleasant evening with his family at the beach before shipping out with his fellow pilots. The next day, the team rushes through the carrier's hallways and up the stairs to their planes. However, it turns out to be just a drill, and Sevali expresses his disappointment with their performance. The team then heads back to their quarters, but Brown is approached by Life magazine for an interview to ease the public's anxiety about a potential war. Brown wants to be treated like any other pilot, but the interviewer is more interested in highlighting his race. Sevali intervenes and brings Brown back to work. Later on, below deck, one of the army guys asks if Brown can juggle as well. Hudner confronts him face to face, but Brown diffuses the situation by making them walk away. Hudner wanted to teach him a lesson, but Brown believes that it's better this way, and they will talk later.
Sevali is in need of a volunteer to perform a task that nobody wants to do. Hudner volunteers and nudges Mooring to do it, and Hudner allows him to. Mooring completes the task on the plane but fails to make the landing, causing the plane to crash into the ocean. Everyone is saddened by Mooring's death, but Brown tells Hudner that he does not appreciate his comments about what Mooring could have done differently. Hudner insists that pilots won't die if they follow instructions. Later on, the pilots give a toast to Mooring. When it's just Brown and Hudner, Brown tells him about his experience at the academy where they made him take his test 10 times because they didn't believe a black man could swim. They even put rocks in his flight suit and held him under while putting ice in the water. They didn't care if he died in that pool, but Brown managed to make it out every time by not doing what people told him to do. He was trying to teach Mooring this lesson. They dock in Cannes and go sightseeing ashore. Brown goes into a store for Daisy's gift and sees a group of sailors gathered around actress Elizabeth Taylor. One of the sailors makes a derogatory comment about not being with Brown, but Elizabeth Taylor invites him to a casino party later that night. The pilots show up but are initially denied access to the French casino until Brown starts speaking French, which convinces them to let them in reluctantly.
After some dancing and drinking, the group thanks Elizabeth and moves on to another location. Hudner spots a stunning woman and impresses her with a magic trick. Suddenly, the army guys from the carrier arrive, and a brawl breaks out because one of them believes he had a chance with Elizabeth earlier at the casino, but Brown ruined it for him. Sevali briefs the team on their mission. North Korea has captured Seoul, and if they take over the rest of the southern peninsula, they could potentially invade Japan. The team's objective is to destroy 2 bridges over a major river along the border to slow down Chinese troops from entering North Korea. The ship sets sail for Korea, where there may already be 100,000 Chinese troops present. The team encounters enemy fire as they fly over the bridges, but they are unable to completely destroy them. Brown disobeys orders and returns to finish the job. Meanwhile, on the ground in Korea, the army guys are freezing and waiting for an attack from Chinese troops. When it finally happens, it's an unfair fight. Hudner submits his mission report to Sevali, detailing the events that occurred. Brown questions him about it, claiming that discipline for him is different than for others. Hudner understands and asks the team to provide their accounts to clear Brown's name. While walking in on Brown, Hudner overhears him repeating hateful words to himself in front of a mirror. Hudner informs Brown that he has convinced the other guys to testify that the mission was complex and that Brown did the right thing. However, Brown knows that a piece of paper won't be enough to help him. When asked what he wants Hudner to do, Brown replies, "Just be my wingman. Forget the lifesaver and get in the damn water." Later on deck, Brown takes a breather and is joined by a black crew member who congratulates him on his flying skills from the other day. The crew member tells Brown that they all chipped in and bought him a watch in Cannes with "above all others" engraved on it. This gesture touches Brown. On the runway, Brown bumps into an old friend named Daisy. Got a letter from Brown, who had hidden her birthday gift and left clues for her to find it. She eventually found the gift, which was a pair of earrings, in Pam's closet. Brown ended his letter with the words "lovingly and completely yours. I'll love you forever." Sevali and his team were given a briefing about the army's fight in an indescribable hell. For every Marine, there were 6 Chinese soldiers hiding in the woods. The temperature dropped below -30 degrees at night, and the Marines were barely holding on.
Air support would have been greatly appreciated, but it was a risky mission. On the ground, the Marines prayed for help until the pilots arrived.
They fought fiercely against their enemies, but when they left the area, Hudner noticed that Brown's plane was leaking fuel. Brown claimed that it was oil, and that he needed to bring down his plane safely because he wouldn't last much longer. Sevely called for search and rescue while Brown released all of his missiles so that they wouldn't fall into enemy hands. Brown landed hard on the ground, and Hudner couldn't see him moving. He decided to crash land his own plane to be with Brown despite other pilots' attempts to dissuade him. Hudner ran towards Brown, who was stuck between his seat and control panel. Both men tried to lift it off him but failed to do so. Search and rescue received Sevely's mayday call, but the darkness made it impossible to land. Alabama overheard the call and informed them that he was on his way. In the freezing cold, Hudner gave Brown his beanie cap to keep him warm and tried to put out the fire on Brown's engine with snow. Despite Alabama's arrival, they were unable to free Brown from being wedged. As time passed, Brown became weaker and weaker until he asked Hudner to tell Daisy that he would always love her. Hudner tried his best to free Brown by beating the plane with all his might but stopped once he realized that Brown had passed away. They left, but Hudner promised to come back for Brown. Hudner pleaded with his commanders to let him go back for Brown's body, but they denied him. Unfortunately, Brown's body was never recovered. Back on the carrier, Hudner was checked out by a doctor while Sevely led other pilots on a funeral flight to say goodbye to Brown. Daisy received a letter from the War Department which overwhelmed her with emotion. Time passed, and she flew to Washington where President Truman awarded Jesse Brown and Tom Hudner with the Medal of Honor. After the ceremony, Hudner spoke with Daisy about being afraid of this day. She told him that she appreciated what he did and reminded him that it wasn't his job to save Jesse, she just wanted him there for him, which he was. Finally, Hudner apologized for not saving Jesse, but Daisy reassured him that it wasn't his fault as he did everything he could have done under those circumstances. Hudner and Brown families were lifelong friends, and their offspring maintained a strong bond. The movie concludes with Brown sharing his final letters to Daisy, signed off with his customary phrase, "Yours truly, devotedly and entirely yours, Jesse." Thank you so much for joining me on this journey through the movie Devotion. I hope you enjoyed the summary and were able to get a glimpse into the powerful story of love, sacrifice, and devotion that it tells. As we wrap up, I want to ask you, what's the next movie you want to see summarized? Is there a particular film that you've been curious about but haven't had the chance to watch yet? Let me know in the comments below and I'll do my best to bring it to life in my next summary. Once again, thank you for watching and I can't wait to hear your suggestions. Eng, Ease, RBY, Jean Wen, FRSY.